Well, good morning, Beaumont. I like to major in good news and bring you good stuff every day. Sometimes you just can't because there's a lot of bad news out there and you need to be aware of it or I wouldn't talk about it. But I thought this was kind of interesting to say the least. We've had a lot of problems with people going after Tesla simply because Tesla, as far as the United States is concerned, and even the rest of the world, of course, is the greenest company that you're going to find. They build electric cars, no emissions, zero emission vehicles. And let's face it, Tesla was what all of the good people were driving. And now it's gone completely the opposite because Elon Musk, the guy who just rescued our astronauts from being lost in space because he's the only one that could do it, now he's on the list of guys that need to be destroyed because, well, he's trying to expose what your federal government has been doing to you for decades, and that is fleecing you blind, literally urinating on your leg and telling you it's raining. And they liked it that way. Well, now the alleged laundry list of resistance items to the Trump administration is that you can vandalize Tesla's dealerships, you can firebomb their charging stations, you can terrorize the Jews on college campuses, you can do SWAT events on conservative personalities, and you can support Islamic terrorism as much as you want because Donald Trump and Elon Musk are the bad guys. Well, the latest example of liberal empathy, somehow seemingly a great deal less empathetic than one might hope, a 24-year-old man by the name of Daniel Clark Pounder is now facing federal charges after allegedly using Molotov cocktails to burn Tesla chargers in Charleston, South Carolina. They threw firebombs at particular targets for liberal vandals, leading to potentially higher insurance rates for owners. In this case, Clark Pounder went far beyond just this bit of vandalism, though. North Charleston officers responded March 7th to a Tesla charging station on a Tanger Outlet Boulevard around 7:15, following reports of suspected arson. When they arrived, the witnesses explained that a white man in a gray jacket wearing a hoodie with a black face mask that had spray-painted F Trump on it, long live Ukraine, in red next to the Tesla charging stations. They said then the man threw the Molotov cocktails made out of beer bottles at the charging stations, damaging them before leaving the scene. The police report that the witnesses advised that the suspect had accidentally caught their own selves on fire while throwing the devices. Clark Pounder, a resident of James Island, was arrested and charged with arson of property and interstate commerce. And this charge carries up to 20 years if indeed he's convicted. And since they have video, well, it's very likely he'll be convicted. In the Clark Pounder case, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives got involved after it became clear that they needed some more inept people in this thing. And there's nobody more inept than somebody who works for the ATF. So nonetheless, acting U.S. Attorney Brooke Andrews said these kinds of attacks have no place in our community. We're grateful for the prompt response of our first responders and law enforcement. We must remain united in our commitment to safety and respect for all, regardless of our political differences. And the arrest and charges were reported last week, making it the latest outrage and a party of resistance that we've seen from the leftist Marxist Democrats. Vandalism of Teslas? Yes. Check. Firebombing stations? 2. Also. Check. Swatting conservative figures? Check as well. What we want to remember is it's important to the leftist resistance to free Mahmoud Khalil, the Hamas leader of Columbia University's anti-Jew pro-terrorist organization. He has been arrested. He should have been, and his visa has been revoked. There's a through line here. With each affront to decency, remember the Democrats in the address of Donald Trump to Congress, the Democrats and the left lose more and more voters who are fed up with assaults on common sense. Thus, the center gets off the Democrat vote, and now it leans even farther to the left because everyone on the ship is still leftist. So This means reinforcing the cycle of worse and worse decisions. So naturally, this guy thinks that firebombing Tesla supercharger stations was worth 20 years in prison, allegedly. We'll see how he is after he gets sentenced. And of course, his associated vandalism was in support of Ukraine. That war is almost over, except for a little cleanup. The law is no impediment when resistance is involved. This seems amazing. And now this. Well, this is, of course, exciting. Our very own Representative Brandon Gill has introduced articles of impeachment against Judge James Boasberg, whom I talked about on this show yesterday. But he, of course, tried to stop Donald Trump from deporting these Tren de Aragua gang members over the weekend. And I said, really, Donald Trump ignored them, and that's okay. But I said, really, what they need to do is turn this plane around, bring these guys back, and unload them at his house and say, you take care of them. Anyway, President Trump recently struck a deal with El Salvador President Nayib Bukele to detain some of the worst, most violent illegal aliens in Latin America's notorious but highly effective CECOT prison. That's CECOT. And we deported a few hundred Tren de Aragua gang members to this facility on Saturday. Of course, they immediately set up board meetings there. I'm certain it will become a Tren de Aragua stronghold. But anyway, Boasberg tried to block this from happening, even verbally ordering Donald Trump to turn that plane around in midair and bring it back. Like I said, should have brought it back to his house. Gill therefore presented his articles of impeachment to the House, accusing Boasberg of high crimes and misdemeanors in the form of pursuing political gain while blocking Donald Trump's constitutional prerogatives and enforcement of the rule of law. And, of course, if I didn't mention it, we happen to know that Judge Boasberg's daughter is heavily involved in helping illegal aliens come to the United States and commit crimes. Anyway, the resolution said the commander-in-chief has broad authority over the executive branch, including the authority to protect the nation, which includes the Alien Enemies Act under which he deported these gang members. Gill argued that Boasberg ignored explicit rulings from the Supreme Court and has illegitimately tried to substitute his own judgment for that of the elected president of the United States, thus usurping the role of the executive and unilaterally taking upon himself the power and authority of the president. That marks the violation of his oath to the Constitution, the duty of impartiality to the United States. Congressman Brandon Gill, a Texan, yes, by making this political decision outside the scope of his judicial duties, he compromised the impartiality of our judicial system and has created a constitutional crisis. So the question was asked, have we allowed judges to accumulate far too much power? And the answer is obviously yes. Even as the Democrats have been shrieking about the rule of law in recent days, something that never bothered them during the Obama administration, whether it was 1, 2, or 3, the articles of impeachment are correct in saying that Boasberg was the one who was disregarding the rule of law. Deputy White House Chief Stephen Miller said there's no limit to the absurdity implied by Boasberg in his claims. If Boasberg effectively had the power to act as commander-in-chief, then he could also, in theory, stop the movement of the Air Force or even direct an aircraft carrier to a new location. There have only been 15 federal judges impeached throughout the history of the United States, and only 8 have actually been convicted of their crimes, according to the webpage for the United States courts. Though he is unlikely to be removed from office, and I say, what? He, even successfully impeaching Boasberg, will put him among the less than 1% of federal judges in our judicial history who have had this not-so-illustrious distinction, but it's a distinction that he deserved. He is engaged in breaking the law, making him far worse than any of the Tren de Aragua criminals that he was trying to bring back. He has also proven that no matter how robust our current government is, how active the, quote, democracy, unquote, has been working when they elected Donald Trump with the popular vote as well as the Electoral College in a landslide. The nation cannot survive if these unelected bureaucrat judges can universally subvert the basic functions of protecting America from these criminals. They must be held accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, Congress must act, and I encourage you to, first of all, for Representative Gill here, I encourage you to call his office and give him kudos for doing this, Brandon Gill. The second thing is, I am asking all of you to call your congressional reps and any congressional reps you may have any business with and tell them that they got to put a stop to this. We cannot have these federal judges usurping the power of the president. And Donald Trump, as president, can no longer just be out there every day knowing there's going to be 25 lawsuits from these judges or 50 lawsuits or more from these judges who are not elected to anything. So I'm asking you to do that. Brandon Gill, by the way, is with the 28th district. He came into office on January 3rd. He was preceded by Michael Burgess. So, and his phone number is in Flower Mound, 972-966-5454. That's 972-966-5454. Also, the Washington office, 202-225-7772. Call Brandon Gill and say thank you. Meanwhile, in the other good news section, Donald Trump has moved a copy of the Declaration of Independence into the Oval Office. This is pretty cool. It's behind a curtain that he pulls. He only opens it when he wants to demonstrate it to people. It's now hanging near the Resolute desk. While the original has very faded lettering, the copy in the White House is very clear and legible. And the Hill reported that the White House did not provide more information on which specific copy is now in the Oval Office because there are 26 original copies in existence, according to a webpage, but there's only one copy of the engrossed and signed Declaration of Independence in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. And that copy was produced and signed several weeks after the original Declaration was first published. So we think that's very cool. There are 26 known copies around the world. It's not clear why he moved the copy of the Declaration into view of his work area, but we believe it's because the United States is back. And finally, let me say this. You're on social media, whether you're on Facebook or Getter or Twitter or any of the other half a dozen out there, Truth Social, one of my favorites. Please invite them to come to freedom1300.com. Freedom1300.com. Go there today and post, I listen to Freedom 1300 AM radio in Beaumont, Texas, and you should too. You have a choice, and you chose Freedom 1300.